Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. No special announcements or anything, so let's jump right in. Okay, I got to start out making sure everybody who's been waiting for one hears this. The RetroTINK 4K will be in stock this Friday at noon New York City time, so look up whatever that is in your region, and the price is exactly the same. And these should be in stock for a little while, but that's what we thought last time. These things are really selling a lot more than many people expected. And I think it would be a safe bet, and this is a total guess, by the way. I could be wrong on either side of this, but I think it would be a safe bet that if you were looking to pick up a RetroTINK 4K, do it this weekend. You don't have to run and get it immediately at noon, I think, but I don't think it's going to last weeks. I hope it does. Maybe you might get a giant batch where they're just going to always be in stock. Maybe they'll only sell out a couple of days before the next batch arrives, so they'll always feel like they're in stock anyway. But that's what I said last time, and I genuinely thought that last time, and they sold out within just a few days. So, I mean, this obviously is something that people really want, and, rightfully so. It's not for everybody. It's expensive, so this isn't for every single retro gaming setup. But I do strongly think if you've already spent the money on a beautiful OLED TV, seriously consider this, because all the options that this thing has for both video games as well as older video content, which I've talked a lot about, I just think this thing brings a lot to the table. And if you're somebody that has a much cheaper TV where you just don't need the best, there's other good options out there that you'd be more than happy with, including even just the TINK 5X is still just as good as it always was. But if you're looking for the best, it's coming back on Friday. Links to everything are here. My launch video's here. And of course, I have links to other cheaper products just because that's totally fine as well. So, as long as you're using not crappy equipment, you're winning. And that could be everything from a RAD2X cable to a GBS control to just composite or RF into a CRT. They're all awesome options. Just stay away from the garbage ones, like those cheap plug-and-play HDMI cables that never really work right and, usually just add 5 frames of lag and give you a headache. Lots of great options. Just stay away from the bad ones. Next up, pre-orders are now open for the next batch of GameCube MemCardPros. Not to be confused with the PlayStation ones, which I'll talk about in a second, but these are the MemCardPro GCs, and they're due to ship in October of this year. So this is a couple-month pre-order, just like last time. Last time they shipped right on schedule, and in fact, basically everything 8-Bit Mods has been releasing has been pretty solid on schedule. So price is about $65 with multiple colors to choose from. And this is something that I really think every GameCube fan should at least think about. And I know I always say that about all mem cards, including the PS1 and 2 versions, and that I'll be talking about in a second. But honestly, this, unless you're the type of person that really doesn't use memory cards at all, you're a casual GameCube gamer, you only need to play a couple of racing games or whatever. If that's the case, or if you only have 1 or 2 games, sure, the cheaper memory cards are fine. But this really is one memory card that will handle everything and will work on Wii's for GameCube games. You could run Swiss from it on your GameCube. You'd have to find a way to boot to Homebrew first, but you could still load that on there. It has virtual memory card support. I mean, this really is just one memory card to rule them all. I'm such a huge fan of these for all of the consoles that they're available for. And if you want more info on exactly what this could do with your GameCube, definitely check out Tito from Macho Nacho Productions video on it. But I guess I'll stop rambling because I got another MemCardPro to talk about next. And speaking of the MemCardPro, the MemCardPro 2, that amazing follow-up to the original MemCard that works with the PS1 and PS2, is now back with some limited edition colors. The original charcoal and smoke black versions are still available. However, there's also aqua, silver, and ceramic white. All colors are the same $50 that they've always been. And if you're someone who carries yours between locations, you might want to consider a hard shell case. Greg from Laser Bear has you covered, and I have pictures and links in there for that too if you're interested. But this is awesome because I'm a giant fan of these things, and more colors are always a good thing. Maybe you have a unique case for yours. Maybe you just want yours to stand out. Maybe you want another one with a different color, which I'm not sure why, because this really is the only memory card you would ever need for PS1 and 2, but whatever. If you like multiples, now you could get some in some cool colors. The only things to note is they're available and in stock right now from 8-Bit Mods in the UK. However, the batch is en route to Stone Age Gamer in the US. So while of course anything could happen, right? A meteor could hit the shipment that has the stuff in them. I think this is a pretty safe bet where if you were going to buy from Stone Age Gamer, you'd probably get it at about the same time anyway. So while Stone Age Gamer rightfully and honestly has it listed as a pre-order, this isn't like the last one where they're coming in October. They're coming in days or weeks. So if you're in North America, I would just use Stone Age Gamer as usual. Obviously, if you're in Europe, then 8-Bit Mods is the way to go. But I just wanted to be transparent about that. I didn't want somebody to click the link and be like, wait a minute, this says pre-order. It is, but it also kind of isn't. So, and if you want more info on this, as you would imagine, Tito from Macho Nacho Productions has you covered with an awesome video going through everything that you would need to know. So strongly recommend watching that because this really is just incredible. I love the MemCard products, all of them, but this one's huge because you could use it for your entire old school PlayStation collection. So links for everything are right in the post. This next one's a little bit weird, but bear with me for a second because it's going to be kind of a quick one. The YouTube channel Planet Clue just released a patch for Mario Party Advance on Game Boy Advance, which has a couple of quality of life improvements, and it also changes the name to Mario's Carnival Quest, which is basically the biggest change. So when I first saw that, I was like, why are we writing about this on RetroRGB? But I trust Crystal's posts, so I ended up watching Clue's video on it, and then it all clicked and made sense to me, and that's why I thought it would be fun to share it with you all. Essentially, Mario Party Advance is basically the most hated Mario game, and Clue has a very strong argument as to the fact that it was probably the title that did it, because when you go into a Mario Party game, you're expecting one thing. So changing the title and then also watching this video to see this in context really hopefully would give people another perspective on it and may allow for people to give it another chance who are into these types of games. So I would definitely watch the video if you know about this game, if it was infamous, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, because it kind of goes into the history of Nintendo's marketing of the era and how they messed up quite a bit with certain things. And then it goes into the game itself, the changes and all of that. So I thought it was pretty neat. I think this is definitely something that adds interesting perspective. And if you've never played the game before or don't care, then this one's probably not for you. But I mean that with love, because I think there's a bunch of people out there that have probably had some strong feelings about that Mario Party game that this might be an interesting perspective for you. Next up, Gamescare Brazil just announced the GF1 Neptune console, which is essentially their FPGA recreation of what the canceled Sega Neptune console would have been, a Genesis and 32X in one, and this one will also play Sega Master System games via any Master System converter cartridge that you have. This is a pretty ambitious and kind of cool sounding project, and it has a bunch of neat features. It's going to have HDMI output. They're expecting up to 1080p, but they're going to confirm later on. It will also have a Genesis 2 style mini DIN, so you'll get composite and RGB just like the original Neptune would have. And it's also going to have a micro SD slot, which you will be able to load ROMs off of. And will also have Wi-Fi built in and its own store, and it's even working on getting some bundled exclusive games for it. So this would hopefully allow another platform for developers to sell their Genesis games, which is pretty cool because all of the awesome games that are out there, if you wanted to play it on a console like this, the easiest way would be to buy it on Steam and take the ROM out of that. But if you wanted to support the developer and play an awesome new game, wouldn't it be easier to just buy it right on the console and have it saved automatically right to the micro SD card? So I love all of that. It's got 2 Genesis controller ports in the front, Genesis style, so that should be pretty easy to interface with all of the original peripherals. And being FPGA based, it should work with light gun games via the analog output. There's no magic trickery that's going to fix that through HDMI. And it also has the ability to connect to a Sega CD via the port on the side. And this is going to be very similar in size to a Genesis 2. So if you plug it into a Sega CD2, it should fit pretty perfectly, just kind of like the original Neptune was going to do. They're not sure if you're going to be able to play Sega CD or especially 32X CD games right off of the micro SD card, which could get pretty complicated, and it is something that I would absolutely love, even though the 32X CD library really isn't exactly extensive, but whatever. However, it will work with original stuff, and I imagine it would work with a ROM cart with Sega CD emulation on it as well, because why wouldn't it if it works the same as an original? Unfortunately, though, there's no official price or release date yet. They're still just kind of working on all of that stuff. There is, this is more than a proof of concept, though. They do have demos working, so it's not like just an idea that they're trying to sell, and they're not even selling anything yet. So I'm happy to promote this one because the team sounds like they're just as excited as I am about this, because I think anybody who grew up in that era loved the idea of the Neptune, especially when the 32X wasn't released yet and people thought it had a chance to be interesting and not, completely tank. So this is pretty neat. This is obviously something that I want to support and get behind. I just hope that it comes out on the sooner side, because we do have a lot of projects being announced that, never end up coming out. But the fact that they're not taking people's pre-order money is a good thing. Not taking it yet, not until they have a solid release date. So I think that's a sign of a team that knows what they're doing. And I've worked with GamesCare before on quite a few things, so always had good experiences with them. So fingers crossed, and this hopefully will come out soon-ish and perform as advertised, because if it does, I'm all on board for one. Also, they have a teaser out of a game called Sword of Apocalypse, which is going to be a Neptune exclusive game, and it might do things like take advantage of the FPGA to do things that might not be possible on original Genesis or 32X hardware. So that's kind of an interesting thing but if you want more info, check out the post. And of course, as soon as there's more info from GamesCare, I will be posting updates, especially if there is price or release date or any more details like that. But I'm generally very optimistic for this and really hope that it comes out soon, because I've always wanted a Neptune. Next up, Donald just posted a video that fans of games with early 3D graphics should definitely watch, because it adds a very interesting perspective to things. And the whole concept is basically why low-res graphics might still be the best choice for some early 3D graphics games. And basically, it kind of starts with the concept of these games were designed to be played probably in composite video and definitely on a CRT, which is very forgiving for early 3D graphics. But you start scaling them and playing them on flat panels, and things get a little weird. Now, some of the rendering in HD that you could do with emulation is absolutely phenomenal, and definitely the way that most people would probably want to try it on a flat panel. And of course, some of the HD remakes, especially the fan-made ones, are incredible. But there are absolutely scenarios in which keeping the jaggy look of the original games is more forgiving and kind of more towards what the original developers were intending for, kind of like the composite on a CRT look. So it's not a very long video, so I would strongly recommend it to anybody who just has opinions on this, as I did, because I think you might change your opinion on some games that you'd want to keep the edges kind of jaggy and see what you could do from there. I also would be really interested in how some of the smoothing techniques would work with these, but Donald's video really goes into all of this, and it is emulation focused as well. So definitely give it a try if you're into early 3D graphics, and if you're into 2D graphics, sharp scale, definitely, always. Sharp scale, keep the right aspect ratio, add whatever filters you want. But, it's my opinion, but it's a pretty strong opinion. Whereas with the early 3D graphics, I think there's lots of right ways to do it, and you should really just choose what works best for your game on your setup. And this video really puts that into perspective. Will's Console Mods is now selling an internal no-cut, no-solder FDS Key kit for the Twin Famicom. So basically, if you have your Sharp Twin Famicom and either you have a dead disk drive, or maybe you want to keep the disk drive because it's working, but you don't want to wear it out while you're playing your Famicom Disk System games, you could install this kit, which includes the open source FDS Key, which is the drive emulator for the Famicom Disk System. So a very quick overview is that the Famicom Disk System had a RAM module and a disk drive to it. And the Twin Famicom has the RAM module built in. And the disk drive is literally just that. It's just getting the information off of the disk, whereas the RAM module has some extra chips on it. You get some extra sound channels. So people who really prefer original hardware want to use that whenever possible. but still emulate the disks themselves for much faster loading and just easier than having a stack of older disks that you probably want to preserve and keep, because those are really neat. If you're from the rest of the world who didn't get the Famicom disk system, it's pretty cool just to see those. Hopefully you could see them in person at an expo one day, because they're kind of like a floppy disk, but they're kind of also unique. So those are neat. Very neat. But this installs right inside the Famicom disk system to accomplish exactly that. It goes right where the disk drive would go, and it's available in different colors to match whichever twin Famicom that you have. And that way you could access it right from the console built in, and basically just use it as if you had the discs installed, but with this in place of it. There's also an external version for sale, I believe, but I haven't tested that one. And I really think this one, especially for the lower price of $45, is something that a lot of people who have a twin Famicom with a dead disk drive, I think this might be your first choice, just because it's all seamlessly integrated, and there's no soldering. You just unplug what's there and plug this in its place, and it's also no cut. So I think all of those things, the functionality, the ability to very easily put your console back to stock if you wanted to, I think that's going to push a lot of people, or a lot of twin Famicom owners, to buy this one. So a bunch more info and links are right here in the post, and I just really enjoy projects like this, because anything that makes things easier for people without really sacrificing anything is a huge win. Like I said, even for people with working drives that just want to preserve them, you don't have to solder or cut anything. You just take it out, put it in an anti-static bag, put this in its place. Now you have a fully functioning twin Famicom, but you just don't have to load disks all the time. Retro Gamer Stuff has 3DO RGB kits back in stock and ready to ship. And if you're unfamiliar, these are kits originally designed by Dan, Citrus 3000 PSI, and open sourced. So Retro Gamer Stuff is selling them totally by the rules here. And it allows for a couple of things. First, as you would imagine, it allows for true RGB output from most models of the 3DO. You just want to check the installation instructions just to double check that you have the right one. And it also includes a true 240p 480i toggle switch that would also affect the other outputs. And that's a pretty big deal, because while the 3DO only outputs 480i, unless you have a rare Japanese version, most of the games really lend themselves better to 240p graphics. Maybe FMVs like Night Trap might look a little different in 480i, but not really most of the other games. So if you have one of those Japanese 3DOs and you have a good scaler, or you're running on a CRT, I personally would probably leave that alone and just enjoy the very high quality S-Video output, because the Japanese 3DOs have that switch already built in. But if yours doesn't have that, I would strongly consider this. The only reason you might not want it is if S-Video is working absolutely perfect for you. You don't really need anything else. Maybe you don't have a monitor that even has an RGB input. Then you could look into just doing the 240p 480i switch to it. But if you can benefit from RGB in any way, having it all together like this is really cool. And Retro Gamer Stuff also sells backplates, so you could remove the RF jack and the RF switch, put this in its place. You have a nice little label, and it also makes it a no-cut mod, because you're just putting it in place of the RF switch. So this is definitely something that every 3DO owner should just consider, even if you decide it's not for you. I did a launch video for this back in the day, and I think I did a fairly good job, so you could still get all of the info that you would need on it. The only difference is where to buy it, obviously, which is Retro Gamer Stuff. But if you want more info, check out that video. Everything's all linked in the main post, and this is definitely an awesome product for 3DO owners. Next up, Tito from Macho Nacho Productions recently posted a video that showcases kind of a proof of concept mod that allows you to upgrade your original Xbox to 256 megabytes of RAM. Now, it originally came with 64. The 128 megabyte upgrade has been around for a while, and now this is kind of useless at the moment, but it just proves that the mod can be done, and it is very complicated to do, and you obviously would require a custom BIOS to test and to take advantage of this. And it doesn't do much for original games. I think there was a handful of original games that may have been patched to take advantage of 128 megs of RAM. I'm going off of memory, and it's been a long time, so my apologies if I've gotten that completely wrong. But if that was the case, repatching to try to take advantage of more RAM might help, might allow for a small performance bump. Also, any homebrew like emulation or running any of those Xbox arcade games might potentially be able to be patched in order to take advantage of this. But generally speaking, this is more of those like, let's just do it to see if it could be done types of things, which I'm a massive fan of. I mean, obviously I'm a huge nerd. So this stuff like this and videos like this, I very much enjoy, even if I decide I would never want to do this for my own Xbox. So I would strongly recommend watching this if you're into it. The developer Prehistoric Man also did, I think, a couple of videos on it as well. And it basically takes RAM chips. You have to remove the existing and then replace it with this and then populate the other ones and load up the new BIOS. So it's pretty awesome. Tito's post goes into all of it in detail and links to all of the videos, including his own, obviously. So, if you're an Xbox fan, watch the video. I don't think most of you are going to be doing this mod, but I still think most Xbox fans would at least enjoy seeing what this is like and thinking about, pontificating about what it possibly could do someday. Now it's time for this week's Mr. Updates, care of Lou from Lou's Retro Source. As usual, I'm going to skim through these and add my thoughts where I feel like it, but if you want visual examples and a lot more details, please check out Lou's video. Starting us off, Taki Udon's alternate DE10 Nano and updated USB board have been shown with a female header between USB-C and USB-A that carries power and data between both boards, so no extra adapter would be needed for USB communication. So that's pretty cool. That kind of helps streamline things a little bit more, helps with the power stuff. And pre-orders are not being taken now. However, ordering should begin on July 14th. So that's going to be huge. I'm going to be one of the first to buy one of these just to see how it works. And I'm really looking forward to testing it and just really putting it through its paces. I'm probably going to just do that live on stream because it's kind of my perspective and my position on things that if something's available to the public, I have no problem live streaming. Whereas if somebody gives me a prototype, I always ask permission first. So if I get mine at the same time everybody else's, then I'm just going to fire up in a live stream and really beat up on it. But I'm expecting it to perform exactly as advertised, exactly like the original one would. Also, the handheld Mister that Taki's working on will have a design that will allow different looks themed after each console. So there was Taki posted some images online with that. If anybody's interested, Lou showed them in the video. And Taki also would like to have around 4 hours of battery life, even with the most demanding systems, but the actual board would need to be finalized before any real battery results could be given. Next up, at Too Many Games, Track 17 and Pramod spoke about their experiences with FPGA development, and the development talk was about Twin Cobra, Flying Shark, and Midway arcade games. I actually haven't had a chance to watch that video, but I'm really looking forward to it. I want to see what Pramod has to say, and it does look like the Midway stuff isn't going to be able to run on the DE10 Nano because of the chip on the DE10 Nano, no other reason. Hopefully we can get Mortal Kombat running someday at home on FPGA. Next up, the DE10 Nano board from QM is available now to purchase for $99. The manufacturer confirmed that you could just pop in an SD-RAM module and SD card from your current setup and it'll work. The layout of the board is different than the official DE10 Nano, so there might be issues using it with different I/O boards. And while I'm excited for this, and while I'm very happy that this is available and it's cheap and QM was making this for us, the fact that I can't just order an existing I/O board and put it in an existing case, and there isn't a lot of info on that, I'm kind of waiting for Taki's instead as a result, especially because Taki is also looking to sell it with a USB hub and that 24-bit I/O board. So I'd love to hook all of that stuff up and do performance testing, whereas this one maybe it'll be perfect. I don't really know, but if anybody gets one, please, do a video, live stream, whatever else. If anybody wants to send me one, I could test it. QM if you're listening, which you're sure you're not, but you're welcome to send me one. But I'm more excited about the other only because it was designed as a drop-in replacement, hardware-wise, not just software-wise. But I hope that this just performs exactly like the original, and I hope that this is going to be another awesome option for people. No disrespect to QM I just always give my opinions as I see them. Next, there's a new test build for Mr. Main that fixes an outstanding input issue. So with this new test build, an issue where multiple buttons bound to the same thing will cancel each other out is fixed. So that's handy. Next up, Ronnie Snice released a new wallpaper themed after the Konami shooter Gradius. You should be already updating or setting update all to get these because they're free and they're awesome. I just showed it off again in a live stream I did the other day. Speaking of live streams, you could now use the Sinton light gun on the Mister, but hold off unless you're a Linux expert. I did a live stream, which I made unlisted now just because it was a total shit show. And part of it was, just me learning as I go. But the other part was Andy Sinden was working on it as I was doing the stream. I should have contacted him first or something, but he ended up doing some updates. So the files that I pulled down were corrupt, and the hour and 45-minute stream, like an hour and a half of it was me just running around in circles trying to figure out why it wasn't working. On top of that, I've been talking to Andy, who was very receptive to feedback, which is always such a pleasure with working with anybody like that. And he's going to try to make the installation much more in line with what other stuff for the Mister is like. So imagine any Wizzo scripts. You just run them, basically. So as soon as that happens, I'm going to be doing another follow-up live stream. So I suggest, unless you're in a rush and you're a Linux expert, just hold off for just a few days. Let us test this new, very easy install method and see where we go from there. And it might actually be something that is super easy. And because of how the Sinden light gun works, it just puts a border around the image. This is a lot easier to set up than even the gun for IR, which I'm a massive fan of. I'm a huge fan of JB, but just the simple fact is, even with the lower latency and possibly better performance, I haven't actually gotten the Sinden working yet, you still have to put sensors all over your TV, whereas with the Sinden, you just have that white border. So setup should be a lot easier. So I love that there's choices. I love that there's choices for different skill levels and, of installation, but I can't wait to put this through its paces. But just give me a couple more days, or actually give Andy a couple more days, and then me time to catch up with it. Next up, the next version of Tap2 will be including a new generic serial driver, and with this driver, you'd be able to use any NFC chip or microcontroller, and it would work seamlessly with Tap2 with the right firmware. So that's a big help. And also, Wizzo confirmed that Tap2 is working on Mistex now, which is awesome. I talked about that quite a bit. You could check out the interview I did with Hans if you're interested in what that is, but basically Mistex is going to help evolve Mister to the next generation of hardware and possibly cheaper hardware too. So very cool that you can get that awesome tactile Tap2 on the upcoming Mistex stuff. So that's it for this week. As always, thank you so much to Lou for keeping up with this stuff. There's no chance I'd be able to do it myself, which is why I'm happy to support Lou on Patreon, because I just know without him doing this, I would lose a lot of Mr. News. So thanks to Lou. Please check out his video, and of course, subscribe on YouTube, because that's free, and why wouldn't you? Next up, Rodrigo Copetti recently published his latest deep dive analysis of a game console, this time on the Neo Geo. And if you're unfamiliar with Rodrigo's work, he goes deep into the architecture, into how the software interfaces with the hardware. I mean, they're absolutely brilliant reads. I interviewed him a while back. If you want to hear more from him and how and why he does all of this stuff, I would strongly recommend listening to that. As always, they're on all podcast services. Just search for RetroRGB Rodrigo. But this is basically something where if you're a nerd and you like old consoles, you should at least skim through this, and you might find yourself spending a lot of time and reading every word. So these are just amazing pieces of technical info. And Rodrigo just made everything available as ebooks. Now, everything is still totally free on the website, so there is no paywall behind this. But if you would like to support Rodrigo and you prefer reading stuff like this on an e-reader, which I certainly do, then consider buying them for pretty cheap, or you could buy the whole package with all the work that he's done, and they're available on like every one of the ebook services. So I didn't even link to that. I just linked to the main page for the Neo Geo write-up, as well as the ebook page on his website. And I just think that's a very cool way to support that also makes things easier for you. And the ebook is DRM free, so even if you buy it through one of those services, you could, if you switch e-readers, you could always swap it around to another one. So I love that. I support that wholeheartedly. Everything, all of that amazing work is not locked behind a paywall, but if you want to support and you want to get it easier on something like an e-reader, that's an option now. So I thought that was a really good idea. So well done, Rodrigo, but happy to share this one because his work is really awesome. Well, that's it for this time. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in absolutely any way, because it really is you who's keeping all this stuff alive. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.